Donald Trump entered politics as a businessman with a sharp focus on thrift, cutting costs, slashing foreign aid, renegotiating trade deals, and putting America first. His idea of thrift wasn't about saving pennies, it was about saving billions. He pulled back U.S. involvement in global institutions, cut funding to NATO, the United Nations, and international climate programs, and demanded that U.S. allies pay more of their own way. This strategy was bold and unapologetic. To many Americans, it was a breath of fresh air after decades of global entanglements. They saw a leader who was finally putting domestic interests first. But while this resonated at home, the global economic impact was massive and long-lasting. One of the most defining elements of Trump's presidency was his aggressive trade war with China. Over $360 billion in tariffs were placed on Chinese imports, targeting everything from electronics to industrial parts. China responded in kind, striking U.S. agricultural goods and machinery. The fallout? A massive slowdown in global trade, a rise in consumer prices, and a wave of uncertainty that rippled through financial markets from New York to Shanghai. Supply chains broke down. Companies were forced to relocate operations. Small and medium-sized businesses, both in the U.S. and abroad, bore the brunt of the chaos. Developing nations, especially those dependent on U.S. aid, were hit hard. At the same time, traditional American allies like Canada, Germany, and Japan began to question their reliance on a U.S. that seemed more interested in self-preservation than partnership. Trust in American leadership declined, and global institutions faced uncertainty without one of their most powerful contributors. Meanwhile, China pursued a different kind of thrift. Instead of pulling back, it doubled down on investment. Through its $1 trillion Belt and Road Initiative, China financed massive infrastructure projects, ports, roads, railways, power plants across Africa, Southeast Asia, and parts of Europe. Unlike traditional Western development programs, China offered loans with fewer conditions, drawing in dozens of countries eager for fast funding. This gave China not only economic leverage but political influence in regions long considered under Western sway. At the same time, China kept its military spending relatively low compared to the United States. While the U.S. maintained an annual defense budget of over $700 billion, China focused on cyber capabilities, space technology, and expanding its presence in disputed regions, most notably the South China Sea. Artificial islands were fortified, naval patrols increased. As the United States pulled back, a new global power dynamic emerged. Emerging economies began tilting toward China, not just for trade, but for leadership. Supply chains shifted east. The West, once unified, grew fragmented. Global cooperation faltered. Agreements on climate, security, and pandemic response suffered from lack of cohesion. We're now witnessing the long-term consequences. Tensions between China and the West have reached new highs. Military drills in the Taiwan Strait. Ongoing cyber attacks targeting Western infrastructure. Trade restrictions, sanctions, and digital warfare. Diplomatic relationships have soured. Meanwhile, smaller nations find themselves pulled between superpowers, offered development funds on one hand, and military alliances on the other. The world feels less stable, more fragile. Economies have become more protectionist. Inflation and supply bottlenecks have become part of the new normal. Even the World Bank and IMF have warned of a future shaped by regional blocs instead of global cooperation. Many analysts agree, Trump's thrift reshaped the world. His policies disrupted alliances, fueled nationalism, and sped up the shift in global power from the West to the East. By stepping back, the U.S. unintentionally gave rivals more room to rise. By focusing on economic savings, it sacrificed long-term strategic influence. Today, as we watch rising geopolitical tensions in an increasingly polarized global economy, the legacy of Trump's presidency continues to unfold. His thrift-first ideology may have saved money in the short term, but it also reshaped the rules of global engagement. China, with its strategic investments and calculated restraint, filled the gap left behind.